Coming off the previous dungeon, we learn that the next victim of our murderer is Kanji Tatsumi, a boy a year younger than our team, meaning it is now our job to rescue him, as well as the fact that we are the only ones who can, because of the way this murderer operates, using the TV to drag them in where they are then killed by their shadows. We've only kind of continued the party member social links alongside the ones that will be progressing the story later on. Going into the second dungeon of the game, our persona was Andres. Strangely enough though, the S is pronounced by the main character in the game, but all the text stuff doesn't feature it. Okay, so that's a bit confusing. It's a bit weird, but hey. The persona itself is 5 levels below the cap for party members, nullifies electricity, which is going to help the boss, and once again is weak to wind, something I actually had a problem with this time, because of things I will mention later on in this video. When initially starting out in the dungeon, there weren't many problems. The only thing that was really an issue was SP, something that we couldn't really get much help against, I guess the wording is for this. I have this all scripted, but I even don't know how to word it on there, so I'm just going with that. But okay, so I kept going enough to get to the mid-boss. The next day, it was the time to fight it, so it was no real issue, seeing as I had come back prepared to take it on with SP, items to constantly keep restoring our health, tons of throwable items in the case that we needed to use them to hit a weakness someone couldn't, or in case later on in the dungeon we came across the golden hands, something that it would be much easier to take down with items at our current strength. But hey, I did have to fight the boss multiple times, I think about 3 or 4 in the end, because I kept dying later on instead of going back to save, something that I was very stubborn about when it happened until I just realised it was the easier decision. Those deaths were, unfortunately, a result of my own poor luck or an unintentional misplay, which then caused a series of events that would lead to my death, such as not hitting a specific enemy that has access to a move that can either hit everyone for high amounts of damage, or can hit one person for their weakness that can then keep hitting others as a result. By, say, every other turn, it gets to hit someone twice, because it keeps hitting that weakness that one party member has. More often than not, this would be them hitting one of my teammates and then hitting me, which eventually resulted in my death when it became too much to heal. The leveling period between the boss and the final boss was something that I considered to be very painful. This was because of the fact that I would, I chose to play this on very hard, as you'd know from the last video. Because of that, I ended up getting a lowered XP game, something I then did change because I don't want to be extending the stream by so much longer than necessary for the sake of reaching a level cap. So because I value my time so I can edit all of this, and since this is part of a larger project, I don't have the time to only be streaming. I have to do plenty of other things that keep my work quite busy. So I had to eventually decide, after figuring out that I could even change it in the first place, to increase the XP gain to normal, something I may change to be a bit higher past the 7th dungeon, because getting from around level 70 to 90 can be very annoying, because I'd ideally want to be fighting the final boss at the highest level I can be. So I'd end up spending my time doing that. The boss fight of this dungeon had quite a few tricks up its sleeve that made things range from very easy to painful, for lack of a better word. So the boss itself is completely immune to electric attacks in the way that it drains it, meaning it will restore HP to itself when hit with one, becoming quite a problem if I wanted to hit all of the enemies in that boss fight, seeing as it summons 2 allies for not multiple hits, but I want to hit them all for reasonable amounts of damage with the main character, because the only stronger skill that I have is one that is an electric skill and hits multiple enemies, meaning I just have to use my fire skills, which could interrupt the pattern of damaging another enemy in the boss fight, one of its allies. Because it summons 2 allies, the tough guy and the nice guy, there are 2 different ways to down each of them, one for each, this being fire and ice. So if I hit one with fire, I could interrupt the flow of the battle by making it dizzy, causing the other to use up its turn to try and get it up again. Then that one can hit for massive amounts of damage, due to one of them having a very strong physical attack and the other being capable of hitting for high amounts of damage. This is without the boss even doing any of its own damage in any sort of way. The boss has a few moves that can do quite a bit of damage, these being either strong physical skills or strong electric skills, meaning I had to prepare for either option. So on the protagonist, I equipped an item that gave a 10% chance to counter any physical attack, causing damage to be dealt back to the user. And then for the rest of the team, I gave them the Volt Suppressor accessory. This accessory allows for them to have a chance to dodge electric attacks more often than any others. This was especially effective to put on Yosuke because of his weakness to electricity, causing the boss to hit multiple times in the case that it hits him. So decreasing it in every way can be more beneficial to the battle going on. Everything else that went on in the fight kind of became quite simple. It would be to heal the status effects that my party were given, which can either be poison or rage. Poison being towards the male members of the party, while the female members of the party will gain rage from a specific move that the boss has. This could have caused a problem if before both of its allies were taken down, because the female members of the party are the only ones capable of hitting for effective fire and ice damage, while the protagonist was equipped with a skill card that allowed that to happen. The damage wasn't too great on there, so I mostly stuck to physical skills, meaning that if I were to try and take down these allies very easily to prevent them from buffing the boss up as much as they can and dealing a lot of damage to the rest of the team, I had to make sure not to get enraged, or to at the very least heal it off very quickly, which did become a problem at first, but once the allies were down, getting hit with rage was fine. Getting hit with poison, on the other hand, was still fairly annoying. However, if healing was monitored carefully, it could be easily worked around. Especially in the case of the main character, who nullifies electric skills, so isn't at threat to that, unlike the rest of the team, who may die from it. So I played very carefully around these ailments and made sure the allies the boss summoned were dead before I could start massively dealing damage to it with everyone, as it was something I wanted to make sure was the best it could be before going to actually try and kill the boss, in the case that one of its allies healed it and pretty much just made any attempts to do anything to it completely worthless. I'm not sure if they can heal, though I do believe they can. Overall, the challenge from this video came, or not this video, but this dungeon came much later, unlike last time where it was a bit of an earlier threat, but something manageable at the same time. The one for this video maybe wasn't so manageable because there were quite a lot of enemies that I could defeat, but then there were many that I couldn't defeat as well, making it quite uneven. And having to use items to take out the golden hands for a higher amount of XP also became something that was quite a problem.